Welcome to Declassified Deep Dive, where unredacted files reveal hidden truths. Let's uncover the secrets. I'm your host, Raj, and each week we explore a new secret deep dive.
Okay, so this time you've given us like a whole box of secrets, secret armies, Cold War stuff, really interesting.
Yeah.
We've got excerpts from Daniel Ganser's book, NATO's Secret Armies.
Oh, good one.
Yeah, and then we've got Dr. Felix Padel's article, Spies and Intelligence Agencies, an Anthropological Perspective. And then, to top it all off, some pieces of a CIA journal.
Well, that's quite the mix.
Right. It's really fascinating, these stay-behind units. They were supposed to defend against, if the Soviets invaded. But it's also hush-hush. Even some of the, the people on the government, elected officials, they didn't even know about this stuff.
Right.
So why so much secrecy if they were just, there for defense?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? To really understand that, I think we kind of have to go back in time a bit.
Okay.
Back to like right after World War II.
Right.
Ganser, he describes this feeling in Western Europe. I mean, they were really scarred, from the war.
Right.
And the Soviet Union, they were expanding, and it created this like almost, palpable fear that they could just, show up with their tanks at any moment.
Yeah, he makes it feel very, very real. Like you can almost feel that fear.
Exactly. And that's where these stay-behind armies, they kind of come into the picture. They were, supposed to be like a secret resistance force.
Okay.
Trained and ready to fight, behind enemy lines if the Soviets actually did invade.
Like a backup plan?
Yeah, like a last resort.
Yeah.
Sabotage, intelligence gathering, that kind of thing, trying to disrupt any kind of occupation.
Okay, so like an insurance policy against the Soviets taking over.
Exactly.
But the secrecy, like we were talking about, that's what's so strange.
Yeah.
Why be so secretive? Dr. Padel's article, it gives us a bit of insight into that because he explains how intelligence agencies, they kind of have to operate in the shadows, right?
Right.
To be effective, they've got to keep things hidden.
Yeah, and sometimes even from their own people, it's just the nature of the game.
It makes sense to keep some things quiet, but this level of secrecy around these stay-behind networks, it's just wild. Ganser says NATO, the CIA, MI6, all kinds of national intelligence agencies across Western Europe, they were all involved in this, like, massive web of secrecy.
It's really extraordinary.
I mean, even some government officials were kept in the dark.
Yeah.
That makes you wonder what they were really doing. What was the real goal here?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely raises some eyebrows.
Yeah.
And to get a clearer picture, I think we need to zoom in on one particular example.
Okay.
The Italian Gladio network.
Yeah, this is where it starts to feel like a spy movie, right?
A little bit.
Ganser goes into so much detail about how Gladio was structured. They had these secret training camps.
Hidden away?
Yeah, out in the countryside, weapons stashed away, recruits, ex-soldiers, civilians, all sworn to secrecy.
It's like something out of a spy novel.
It is. And the training they got, it's not just basic combat skills. They're learning sabotage, guerrilla warfare, all this clandestine stuff.
Right.
Ganser even mentions that some of their instructors, they were trained by the British SAS. Like, this was the real deal.
Yeah, these were not weekend warriors.
No, they were serious.
Yeah.
But then, and this is where it gets really interesting, it wasn't just about preparing for a possible Soviet invasion. There are these accusations that Gladio was involved in some really shady stuff during a time in Italy called the Years of Lead.
Yeah, the Years of Lead.
I actually had to do some research on that.
Sure.
What was going on then?
Well, it was a really turbulent period in Italy. From the late 60s to the early 80s, there was a huge increase in political violence and social unrest.
Wow.
And that's when these accusations about Gladio's actions, they start to come to light.
Accusations of what exactly?
Well, we're talking about domestic terrorism.
What?
Bombings,
Right.
Even possible connections to right-wing extremist groups.
So not just defending against the Soviets anymore.
No, this is something completely different.
That's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one event that Ganser really focuses on is the 1972 bomb attack near Pitiano.
Okay.
And when they started investigating this attack and the trial that followed, it uncovered some really disturbing information. And it pointed to Gladio possibly being involved in what they called a strategy of tension.
Strategy of tension. Now, that's something I've never heard of.
Yeah, so basically it's this tactic where you use violence and fear to manipulate public opinion.
Okay,
You try and create this climate of instability and fear.
I see.
And then those in power, they can step in and say, look, we're the solution. We're the only ones who can bring back order.
Oh, so they're using these attacks to justify cracking down even harder.
Exactly.
So the idea is that Gladio was carrying out these attacks themselves to create that fear so they could then step in.
That's the accusation. And it's not just a wild theory. Ganser, he talks about this Italian parliamentary investigation that happened in 1990, where they looked into Gladio.
Right.
And they found out that some of the massacres and bombings in Italy, they were actually organized or at least supported by people within the Italian government itself, and there are even possible links to U.S. intelligence.
Wow, that's huge.
It is.
So it seems like Gladio was operating on a whole other level than just defending against the Soviets.
Yeah, it was far more complicated and honestly pretty disturbing.
Yeah.
What happened in Italy was something else entirely.
Right, it wasn't just about the Cold War anymore.
Right.
So if this was happening in Italy, I mean, what about all these other countries with stay-behind networks?
Yeah, that's the next question, isn't it?
What were they doing? I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about a network that's stretched across all of Western Europe.
We are.
This deep dive, I mean, it's getting more and more interesting.
It certainly is.
So we've got this, like, really unsettling image of Gladio in Italy, maybe even involved in terrorism, instead of just preparing for a Soviet invasion. But Italy wasn't alone, was it? I mean, they weren't the only country with these stay-behind networks.
Oh, no, not at all. Ganser, he found that there were similar networks all across Western Europe. I mean, like France, Belgium, Germany, you name it, Denmark, Norway, Spain, Portugal, Turkey, Greece, even Luxembourg and the Netherlands.
Wow, so this was a huge thing. I mean, it was really widespread.
Yeah.
But what I'm curious about is, were these other networks, were they doing the same kind of, shadowy stuff? Or was that just, a one-off?
It's the big question, isn't it? I mean, were they all playing by the same rules, or was Gladio just, an exception? Ganser, he actually presents some evidence that, makes you think that maybe some of these other stay-behind units, they might have been used for things that, weren't exactly what they were supposed to be doing.
So more of that manipulation stuff, more covert actions. I mean, what were they up to in these other countries?
Well, the accusations they're pretty disturbing. Ganser, he talks about how there are allegations that these units were used to, like, influence politics within these countries, to suppress, left-wing movements, and even to destabilize governments that they thought were, a little bit too friendly with the communists.
So not exactly defending democracy then, huh?
It almost sounds like they were doing the opposite, right? I mean, like undermining the very system they were supposed to be protecting.
Yeah, that's really messed up.
Yeah, it is. And Ganser gives some pretty convincing examples to back this up. He talks about the alleged role of Gladio in those attempted coup in Italy.
Right.
In 1964 and 1970. And then there's the French stay-behind units. They were involved in that OAS coup in Algeria in 1961.
Oh, right, yeah.
And then there are accusations of, widespread human rights abuses by the Turkish counter-guerrilla unit.
It's hard to even imagine all of this going on. I mean, if these allegations are true, it's like the line between fighting communism and just straight up manipulating things behind the scenes, it just completely disappeared.
But didn't anyone notice this? Was there, like, no one watching over them?
Well, that's what makes it even worse. One of the things that keeps coming up in Ganser's book is this lack of, any real oversight. Like, no one in the government was really keeping an eye on these secret armies.
Wow.
So they were basically doing whatever they wanted. I mean, no accountability, no one to answer to.
So you've got these secret groups, highly trained, armed to the teeth, operating in the shadows, and no one's watching them. What could go wrong, right? I mean, especially with all this potential for, political manipulation.
It's pretty scary when you think about it. And it brings up some really important ethical questions, too. I mean, like, is it okay for a government to use violence like this, even secretly? What about the potential for abuse? And what does it do to democracy if this kind of stuff is happening behind closed doors? Yeah, it's a lot to process. And it makes you think about the real cost of the Cold War. I mean, not just, the political stuff, but also the damage it might have done to democracy itself.
Exactly. I mean, were these countries really free if this kind of stuff was happening?
That's a good question. And it makes me
Yeah.
wonder, like, how did people react when they found out about all of this? I mean, you said before that even some government officials didn't know about these stay-behind networks. So imagine the betrayal people must have felt when this all came out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was huge. Ganser talks about how the fallout from these Gladio revelations, it was like a bomb went off. It totally rocked European society.
Yeah.
You know, people's trust in your governments and intelligence agencies, it just plummeted.
Makes sense. If governments were capable of doing this kind of stuff in secret, what else were they hiding? It
Exactly.
makes you wonder who you can trust. But all of this happened during the Cold War, right? I mean, is it really relevant to us now? Or is it just, a dark part of history that we can forget about?
That's the million-dollar question. Is this just a relic of the Cold War? Or are we still dealing with this tension between, security and freedom?
Mm.
To figure that out, I think we need to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. What are intelligence agencies all about? What's their role in society, both then and now?
Okay. Yeah, I'm ready to dive into that. What do you think? It's kind of creepy to think about these secret armies just doing whatever they wanted. And it makes you wonder, has anything really changed? Are we still stuck with this whole like fight between security and freedom, especially now with all this, mass surveillance going on?
Yeah, it's a question we have to ask ourselves, right? And to really get into that, I think we should look at what Dr. Padel calls studying up. It's basically looking at power, where it's most concentrated.
Okay.
And intelligence agencies, I mean, they're kind of outside the normal rules, right?
Yeah, right.
They have to be to some extent. I mean, they need that secrecy, to do their job.
Right, to be effective.
Mhm.
But like we saw with Gladio
Yeah.
and all those other groups, that power, it can be abused.
Absolutely. And the thing is, the Gladio stuff, it wasn't just like a history lesson.
Right.
It had a real impact.
Mhm.
Ganser talks about how it caused this huge crisis for governments. People just lost their trust. Imagine seeing those headlines, secret armies exposed,
Yeah.
NATO's dark secret. I mean, that's got to shake you up.
Yeah, I mean, if they were doing all that stuff in secret, what else were they up to, right? It makes you, like, really question who you can trust.
Exactly. And it brings up this really big question. How do we balance security and freedom? How much power do we give to intelligence agencies? And what are we giving up to feel safe?
Especially after 9/11, right? Padel talks about how the threat of terrorism, it's been used to justify more and more surveillance.
Right, and often without any real discussion or oversight.
It just happens. I mean, think about the NSA. All that data collection they were doing, Edward Snowden, he blew the lid off that whole thing. And now we've got facial recognition everywhere,
Yeah,
I mean, those things might make us safe, but it also feels like we're giving up a lot of privacy.
for sure. And Padel also points out this other thing he calls surveillance capitalism.
Yeah, what's that?
It's basically where companies like Google and Facebook, they're gathering tons of information about what we do online.
Right.
And a lot of times we don't even know what's happening. It's this whole new kind of power, and we're only starting to understand it. I mean, have we just traded one type of control for another?
Yeah, it's kind of like we're living in a world where we're constantly being watched, even if we don't realize it.
Yeah, it's a little unsettling.
It is.
Yeah.
And it brings us back to Gladio, and those secret armies from the Cold War. Are we really any different now? Are we still giving up freedom for security, or are we making the same mistakes all over again?
That's a tough question. We have to be careful, we got to protect our freedom, but we also need to be safe. It's about finding that balance. That's how we avoid making the same mistakes.
This deep dive, it's really given us a lot to think about. I mean, we started with the Cold War, Soviet tanks, all that.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about secret armies, terrorist plots, the CIA doing all kinds of stuff behind the scenes. It's a crazy part of history, but it still matters today.
Yeah, it does. And it leaves us with some big questions. What does all this tell us about power, about secrecy? How do we protect our freedom and stay safe at the same time? It's something we all have to think about.
Yeah, I mean, we've looked at the history, the secrets, how things can go wrong. Now it's your turn, Think about what it means for us today. Keep digging, keep asking questions, and, as always, stay curious.